Welcome to another edition of the Revealing the Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tiago Prem. This week we sit down with Kundalini yoga teacher, Aquarian man, Ayurvedic scholar, father, husband of devotional singer Simrit. If you haven't heard Simrit, you got to get on that. She's incredible. We play her in our classes. We play her in our home. If you want to learn more about Jaidev, you can follow him on Instagram at JAIDEV, Jaidev Singh, or check out his online courses at the Life Force Academy, an extensive resource for all things Kundalini yoga, as well as courses on Ayurveda, courses on the science of sound. I was really looking forward to this conversation, and it didn't disappoint. It was such an insightful time, an insightful conversation with an inspiring teacher and friend. So without further ado, I bring you a great spiritual teacher of integrity and wonderful person, Jaidev Singh, right here on Revealing the Diamond podcast. And one last little request before we go to that is, if you love this podcast, which I know you do because you're here listening, take the time to rate us and review us on iTunes so that we can keep doing this. We can keep providing lectures and interviews, getting the teachings to a broader audience. Thank you. I love you all, and we'll see you soon. Sat Nam. Well, Jaidev, thanks for taking the time to talk with us on Revealing the Diamond. We're sure grateful to have you here.
Indeed. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I think a great place to start is with these interview sessions that we're doing with this podcast, is to kind of get a little background on who you are and what you do, and start off there, and then we can explore that a little deeper.
Okay, beautiful.
So you want to let us know a little bit about you and where you live and what you do? And
Oh yeah, sure, man. So I live in Nevada City, California.
Yeah.
And I'm originally from the East Coast, though. I grew up in South Carolina.
Okay.
And but I've lived here almost, I don't know, like 15 years, roughly. I haven't really been keeping track, but something like that. And I live here with my wife, Simrit, and we have a 12-year-old son, and we've a really beautiful life. I teach a lot of yoga and various things, and she's a musician on the road a lot, but we often come together and do our best to find enough time at home to enjoy our family, but we also enjoy our work, and we both have we're strong mission-oriented people. So we have our Life Force Academy that we do. That's an online thing that has members all over the world, like over 20-something different countries, and a lot of our online courses. And then, of course, we're traveling and teaching. And so yoga and music takes up the majority of our life. And so we're very blessed in that way.
Amazing. How long have you had? I've been a member of the Life Force Academy, and I sure, especially as I was getting into doing the Kundalini yoga, it was such a great resource. How long have you had that for?
Yeah, how long have we had it for? It's I think it's now like a few years old, or I don't remember exactly, but we're somewhere in that 3 to 4 year range.
Is that right?
I believe so. I'd have to double check that. I'm already, like, you can see I'm not very good with the passage of time, because I can't remember how long I lived in Nevada City, how long we've had the Life Force Academy, but it's definitely older than 2 years and younger than 10 years.
Right. You're a yogi living beyond time and space.
Oh, well, one would like to think so. But we just as of yesterday, actually, at least when we're recording this, we just launched our new Life Force Academy. So it's all like from the original one that we uh, launched some years ago. We just kind of flipped that over, and now we have this whole brand new one, which I'm excited about. But yeah, so it's a cool thing, man. It's keeps me inspired and creative, and it has a life of its own. And our whole thing is, how do we? I think one of the number one challenges that I found that yoga practitioners, meditation practitioners, anything, people trying to do things that are helpful. The number one problem seems to be consistency. And I think the number one problem, the number one thing that is most important also is the same thing that's, the biggest challenge is consistency. I think consistency is key in anything, that you're trying to do, to build yourself and to make good progress, whether it's in health or whether it's in your spirituality or anything else. It requires that slow, long-term grind, and that's very challenging. And that's why we created the Life Force Academy, was to really, can we create something that would help people with that consistency piece? And then it just took off from there.
Yeah, I often say to people, and it's funny because it's been a theme the last couple of shows that we're starting off like this, that 90% of the benefit of the practice, whatever the practice might be, meditation, yoga, it could be anything, the benefit is the commitment. That's the big one. And I was even mentioning to somebody the other day, saying, if you made a commitment not to take a paper cup from the coffee place, and you said, I'm going to do that, and if I don't have a reusable cup, then I'm just not going to have coffee, and you committed to that and you followed through, you would get like benefits that you would out of a meditation practice just from the commitment. And I love the way you use the word consistency, because that hasn't come up. We've been calling it commitment, and I think there's something to using that word as well, to be consistent with your commitment.
Yeah. And what do you think makes a person able to commit? I always think that's an interesting thing, because sometimes, you have these waves of inspiration that will allow you to commit. And sometimes it's harder to commit,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you had to be really inspired, if you're a coffee drinker, to like make that commitment of not using a paper cup, because when somebody wants coffee and they're a coffee drinker, man, you better.
Yeah, right. Well, no kidding. I mean, it's just, for me, like what you're saying with the difficulty and consistency, I see it so much. And I think it's like, if somebody can just say that they're going to do something, and it could be something that is a small thing, like maybe it's like, I'm going to get up at the same time every day, or I'm going to, like, it could be anything. It could be like, I'm going to do this 5 minutes of meditation every day as long as I do it before I go to bed, or whatever it might be. If you can keep up with that, like, you feel pretty good about yourself. And I often use this analogy like parenting, and you're further down the way than I am. I mean, we only have one child as well, and she's 5, going to be 6 in June. And I always say, like, I think a good parent, you put things just out of reach of the child. Like, if you're trying to teach them to do something, you don't just do it for them, and you don't put it way out of reach, because then they'll end up frustrated and feel like they can't do it. But if you put it just out of reach enough that they can grab it, they feel so good about themselves when they do it. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at with how commitment is so key. Or I think Yogi Bhajan called it "let your will win." And I think that's sort of what you're working with. Like, set yourself up for success, and then the more you do that, the better you feel, and the more likely you'll commit and or be consistent.
Yeah, like we do these 40-day challenges in our academy, and they're always everyone's really excited at the beginning, in the first few days. But when you get to like day 17, or day even like 11, then it starts to become more difficult. And instead of telling people, only that this is going to be awesome, it's, you got this, it's going to I think it's also important that, well, this is going to be hard, because any time that you make a commitment in one direction, this is a polarity planet, you're going to create an equal and opposite resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're doing something like Kundalini yoga or any meditation practice, you're going to start to stir up your subconscious mind, and that's going to create resistance. So, because there's this great self-sabotage mechanism that we all have that's part of our subconscious, that anytime we're trying to, do something good, there's this polarity to us that seems to want to hijack it in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that comes in very just like unassuming, creative ways. It's not a bad thing. It's just part of the human psyche. So that's why, we try, like, we'll say, all right, we're going to do this. Like, we start one for the springtime, and we're going to do these meditations each day. And this is what they're about. And this is what they'll do for you. And you can do it every day. But then we also, like, once a week, we're going to get together as a group. But then we're also going to release certain teachings once a week. And that's also part of the 40-day commitment. Because if you can keep your mind connected to the bigger reason that you're doing the commitment, that you committed in the first place, if you can keep your lens wide and broad and not get narrowed down into the stress of things too much, then it's much more likely that you're going to maintain consistency, because as the mind stays connected to what's truly important versus what is seemingly important, now we're in business. And that's the goal, isn't it? And that's what meditation does for you. It brings your mind into this wide, more expansive space where what's really important becomes apparent, and what seemingly important, yet ultimately not very important at all, also becomes apparent. Because what's truly important will also be important to you when you're about to take your last breath here on earth.
Right.
And if that can stay connected to you on any given day, then you're going to make wise decisions in life, and you're going to be genuine in life and big-hearted and intuitive in life. And so, what's more important than that? But we need discipline and a lifestyle that keeps our mind connected to that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. I've been thinking a lot lately about the difference between you. There's like an expression that you see around, or you hear it around, that is, don't believe everything that you think. And when you hear that expression, it's denoting or making a point that there's a part of you that's thinking, and then there's a part of you that's believing the thought. So there's your thinking mind, and then there's the part of you that's observing the thinking mind. And then I think, like, okay, well, how many times as a child was I told that I'm not my thoughts? Well, zero. I've never been told that. But yet, right. There's this like common phrase that pops up, on social media, or you tell that to a classroom full of people, don't believe everything that you think, and it totally makes sense. So that means that there is a part of you that is like the what is, or the important part of the what is with a capital W, as opposed to the thinking mind, which is the what is little w. And I think there's something to that. I think there's a part of you that thinks, and then there's a part of you that is. And I guess with your practice, you're becoming aware of the thinking part of you is just going to go on thinking, the same way that your heart goes beating, same way that your nose goes breathing. And then there's the part of you that's processing that. And I guess the yoga practices, so far, in my understanding through the years, are about getting in touch with that part of you that's choosing whether to believe what you think or don't think. But also you're acknowledging that you're going to think, it's going to happen, and you just create a new relationship with thought. And I guess that's meditation. You have any thoughts on that?
I think it's, somewhat useful. Like, the yogis have this very well researched, through just hundreds, if not thousands of years of experience, but they call that part of you that is believing something, using the semantic that you offered.
Yeah.
Is like the word is ahankar, but
Right.
And that's often loosely translated as ego, which isn't always a great translation, because when we utter the word ego, it often has a negative connotation.
Right.
But this does not have a negative connotation. It's neutral. You know, is your liver good or bad? It's neither. It's bad if it's, you know, toxic and causing you pain and suffering, and it's good if it's doing its job well, but inherently it's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So this part of the psyche that believes things or grips onto things, and like, so, you know, I really dig yoga. And so I can take on this sense of like identity, like I believe in it, and that's resonates with me, and I can identify myself as a yogi, and that's helpful to me. And that's part of the ego. That's part of the sense of what makes me, me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to then inform the types of beliefs that I hold. Now, I may be even hopefully wise enough to know that is just still not necessarily absent of illusion. That even that is still a construct of my psyche, you know, and that may not even have inherent reality, but is important in the sense that everybody has to have a sense of identity.
Mm-hmm.
As the yogis just say, that as long as you're in a human body, you're going to continuously create an imagery of yourself. That's just part of the architecture of a human mind. And so you and I, we always have some image of ourselves, and we can say, oh, well, we're formless, you know, we have no imagery. But that's not really true, because then if you believe in, like, say, a formlessness, well, your form then becomes formless. There's always some sort, the mind, in order for it to like operate, it has to kind of identify with things and believe in things and so forth. So we do our best to create the types of identity that will keep us expanding. And part of what I love about yoga practice, and especially Kundalini yoga practice, which they call it the yoga of awareness, because it's in expanding your sense of awareness, so that my job is to continually have a bigger and bigger experience of what I am. And so then my identity shouldn't be something that's static or stagnant. It's something that's dynamic and continuing. And I have to know, as a hopefully a smart individual, that I don't know, that my current understanding and experience of what I am is limited. And that there is layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of reality that I have yet to experience and comprehend. And so if that becomes my belief and how I am kind of positioning my disposition, then I'm not constricting my mental channels, and I'm not being too dogmatic about things, and I'm not being too rigid in my opinions, and therefore I'm not too polarized, and it allows me to get along with people who may have a different political persuasion than I do, or a different sexual orientation than I do, and allows me to just be a human being that's interested in learning and the mystery of life, and not so uptight about things, and not so rigid in terms of my belief structure. There is a sense of belief in what I vibe with and what I resonate with, but it's not rigid and uptight, and that allows that expansion of identity to increase and increase. And then I realize, because of the field of awareness, there's part of me that is talking. There's part of me that is listening to me talk. But then there's another part of me, if I can be aware enough, that is awareness, that you can actually watch the part of me that is listening to me talk. And that's what meditation ends up doing. Somebody who's listening to this right now, they can listen to it. Okay, that's one level of the awareness or the consciousness. They can be conscious of themselves listening to it. But then, hopefully, if they're not driving, they can also be aware of the part of themselves that is listening to themselves watching themselves listen to the podcast. And when you start to explore those different states of an awareness, and there's no reason young children can't do that. In fact, they're very good at it. It comes quite easy to them because there's less distortion in the field.
Right.
Then you have an experience that you're not your thoughts. It doesn't have to be just a belief that I'm not my thoughts. You have an experience that thoughts are something that are flowing, that I'm more so being subjected to, but they're not. I'm not creating them myself, and I can separate myself from the flow of thoughts, and furthermore, the flow of feelings and emotion. So I can experience emotion without being emotionally dominated by the emotion, and that's a very important maturity that we have to develop as human beings, so we're not so darn polarized and so offended so easily, or upset and angered and anxious too easily, and so slammed by things when painful things when they do occur in our lives, because they will occur. If life looks like easy street, there is danger at your door.
Yes, that's right. I know that line. Yeah, it's so true. It's a process, I guess, of seeing beneath the surface. I like the idea that I think it's Jung who said that your thoughts are denser than the physical body, even. And I think
That's interesting.
it's a super interesting idea, because they're totally quantifiable. They can be measured, and then they're at the same time, like you think about, okay, the body's going to die and it's going to become something else. We know that's true, but as far as your thoughts go, like, your thoughts are really dense, because they just come and go, and that's sort of the end of it. But your body is even more eternal than your thoughts. So your thoughts are very dense. And so we don't need to place too much value on them. As you said, unless you're driving, there's value to it, but it isn't the supreme reality of who you are, I guess.
Yeah, there's useful thoughts and there's non-useful thoughts. And I think sometimes, especially in certain spiritual cultures, the yogic culture included, because we have seemingly just as much dogma and rigidity in our yogic communities than we do in our religious communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not anti-religion or for religion or anything like that. I'm just making an observation that I am not into rigidity, and I'm not into things that cause more pain than they do help people.
Yeah, that's right.
And so sometimes, like, for instance, you have like a thought that you don't like, or a feeling or emotion or desire that doesn't resonate with who you are, and yet you're really pulled by it. It's a perverted feeling or thought or desire, or a kind of a mean-spirited feeling. And so sometimes I think what happens with folks is we feel that or think that or desire that, and then there's like this kind of cringe that happens internally, or this kind of sensation of guilt for even like feeling that way or having that thing. And so that's a phenomenon of still the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions are so clinged to by this ahamkar, this sense of what I am. Mm-hmm. And so if I don't have the capacity to separate what I am from the thoughts that are being experienced in my mind, then I've got, essentially I'm living in a space, an internal space that is going to, be pretty miserable ultimately. Mm-hmm. Because who knows, this, the yogis describe it as the mind is not in your brain. The brain is like a computer, but the mind you're living in the ocean of the mind. The mind is the body, is the great insight of Ayurveda, that the muscles are part of the mind and the blood is part of the mind. And furthermore, the entire creation is the mind. So it's not that the mind is inside of you, but the mind is like an ocean, and we are like fish swimming in it. And so we're just like a wave can impact you from many, many, many hundreds of miles away. A thought could come from who knows where, and from who knows what, your ancestry, your this, your that, the karma, the the TV show that you saw that was then in the subconscious, or some billboard that you passed but weren't even aware that you saw, and that went into the subconscious. The mind is infinitely complex. And so if we haven't been able to actually have the number one, the experience that the mind is not substantive, the thoughts that flow through the mind are not substantive in and of themselves, then we're got a problem. And then furthermore, do we have some sort of practice that keeps that type of expanded awareness that makes sure that we are able to separate what we are from the experiences of the mind? And that's what the whole thing is about.
Yeah, I love
everything in yoga, as you know, is about the mind.
Yes,
everything
definitely.
in life is about the mind. It's not about the body, and yet the body is the substratum of the mind. So the body is also important, but it's important mostly from the context of the mind.
Mm-hmm. I love the mind as the ocean analogy. I definitely, in my Buddhist studies, in my time of practice, there's a lot of use of the word mind and space being the same, and studied that. And I love the ocean because of the waves, and especially being somebody who's really always in sound, music, sound. And I mean, that's part of what drew me to Kundalini yoga. And I've been practicing yoga and meditation for 20 years of my life. But coming to Kundalini yoga over the past 3 years or so, with the emphasis on sound so much, I was like, oh, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It's a great fit. I wondered about when you use the ocean analogy, or it could be compared to the quantum field, I guess, when you say it like that. Like Yogi Bhajan, I heard him say that, if a man cheats on his wife in Japan with a geisha, she can feel it across, even though they're not geographically close to each other, and she may not even be conscious of it. She can feel that sensation. And, to use the ocean analogy, I think moving in waves, that really resonates with me.
Well, I don't have any doubt about that. I have a wife that is extremely intuitive and sensitive, as I think all people are equipped to be, but especially all women.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm a very happy marriage and very content and deeply in love and just a devotee of my wife. However, like if I were to like even think about considering like having some sort of affair, maybe I was in some other country, I have no doubt whatsoever that she would know about. I have no doubt. No, like it wouldn't even like, no, this woman would know. And, so, and that's not being psychic either. That is natural. We know these things and we can feel these things, but we haven't, most of us haven't been raised in a type of culture that kind of acknowledges that and knows that in its belief structure within the culture, that then nurtures that and allows us to like, yeah, for sure, we're sensitive beings and we can travel across time and space with the mind, through the mind, and we do it all the time.
I love how you said that that's natural. And it is, and, we often think about, we do these practices and anybody can tap into that psychic ability. But even using the language like I just used, it sounds like it's something outside of yourself that someday you'll get to. But it's the other way around. It's already there. It just takes you doing the deep listening to hear it.
That's right. And back to, consistency. Do we have something like every day, take a shower? Hopefully, we brush our teeth every day. And yet these are the parts of us that, of course we want to take a shower. We want to look good, smell good, be beautiful, physically have hygiene, etc. But now we're evolving into the place in our collective consciousness at this age where we're realizing that you also have to clean the subtle parts of yourself every day if you expect it to operate efficiently. And if it doesn't operate efficiently, you're gambling with your happiness, the most important thing you've got. And one day the body will be gone, and one day the teeth will be gone. But there's no day where your consciousness will be gone. There's no day when the awareness will be gone. And so that's that coming back to that thing about what is truly important versus what is seemingly important.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that the things that are ultimately unimportant don't get some level of importance. You want to adorn the body temple with beautiful clothes and look cool and have swag and enjoy planet Earth while you're here. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yet that's not the things that are ultimately important.
Yeah.
The things that are ultimately important never die. And so can we set up our life so that even the temporary things in life, the things that are changing, even a marriage is temporary. Even the marriage that lasts forever is temporary. Mm-hmm. in the earthly context. Even our fatherhood, motherhood, a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a this, I'm a that. All these are temporary identities.
Mm-hmm.
So they exist on the earth realm. They exist in this particular context of this part of our existence. But they can also be there as almost like tools to serve the things that are ultimately important, the things that are not temporary. It's very Buddhist too, in the sense that everything is impermanent.
Mm-hmm.
And that which isn't impermanent is the only ultimately important thing. And how do you find out what remains? That's the yogic discovery. And so even though a physical marriage on the earth plane may have a certain temporary nature to it, I think the most beautiful part of marriage is when it is serving the impermanent part of ourselves, mm-hmm. to where the marriage acts as a vehicle to help you to experience the part of yourself that is infinite, and to help you experience that within the context of the union, within the context of a partnership with another individual that then acts as almost like a leverage or like a bow, where you use the tension of relationship to propel yourself forward. And that's a beautiful thing, where all the different things. I love basketball, for instance. Even basketball is part of nature. It's part of creation. It's part of life. And it works under the laws of nature. So if something as mundane as basketball can be used as a medium to experience the infinite, if it's done well,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it becomes art. So anything where we take the mundane and it becomes art, then the infinity can flow through it. So our greatest music, our greatest movies, our greatest moments in sports, our greatest moments in all aspects of life become vehicles for the non-dying, the infinity, the creative, the beauty, the love.
Yes. You're speaking my language. I grew up in a basketball family. I'm deep in the March Madness, and we do a bracket like all the cousins and my sister and my dad played, and all of my dad's cousins. And so
Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in a city called Calgary, but in Canada here in Alberta, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I played basketball, and there wasn't a lot of basketball in Canada then. I mean, it's a lot different now, but I used to go to Gonzaga to go to clinics. Ah. And so whenever the time comes for the tournament, I'm cheering for Gonzaga, and they made it all the way to the finals last year.
We were arch enemies last year because and our yogi audience is going to love this conversation, I'm sure. We better move past it quickly before they fall asleep.
Yeah, they're like, oh, how much longer of this?
Yeah, my wife Simran and I were pulling very hard for South Carolina, and you guys took us out. So
yes.
Oh well.
Yeah, but hey, to go back to what you were saying, I am so with you on that. I think that I'm learning, over the years, I've tried to like be, be really spiritual or not at all, or like play the type of music that the crowd is going to like, or behave in a certain way so that I think that I'll fit in. And the more I realize that's not how it works. I mean, that's a very surface thing. But the deeper I get into this, my practices, the more I see that everything in life is an opportunity to connect to consciousness. And I connect to the deep levels of meditation. I also connect to consciousness through basketball. I love it. It's a part of who I am. I connect to it through all types of music. I'm a person who's a recovered alcoholic and drug addict, and I often say I take as much inspiration from the hardcore music that I listen to that keeps me like sober and away from drinking than I do like listening to Yogi Bhajan talk. And those things on the surface look completely opposite, but each of
Mm-hmm.
those things are a vehicle. They're a neutral thing that connect me to the highest version of myself. And I guess that experience is what someone like the Buddha meant when he talked about meditating without meditating. It's
Hmm.
everything in life is an opportunity, if you're aware, to connect to your consciousness. It's a vehicle for you to see who you are.
We often think of, what meditation is, what it looks like is like somebody with their index finger touching their thumb. They're sitting in a cross-legged position. Their eyes are closed. Their heart is lifted. Their shoulder blades are dropped. Their chin is tucked, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I say that's just taking care of the meditative mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's working for you all the rest of the time. That's what the idea in a practice is not that you're only meditating when you're sitting down meditating, but here's what I think is that the meditative mind, you can call it that. You can call it the neutral mind, as we sometimes refer to it in Kundalini yoga. You can call it the intuitive mind. You can call it the third eye. You can call it whatever you want. You can make up a new name for it. It doesn't matter. But that part of the mind is not a luxury for the spiritually or mystically inclined. This is part of a mind that is necessary, that it's being active and activated and maintained is necessary for a healthy human psyche,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
That this is not something that is esoteric. It's not something that should only be reserved for people who, are in synagogues or churches or mosques or temples or whatever the case may be, or yoga studios or this or that. But we've got to get to a point in life, in our society, to where, this is just commonplace. It's painfully obvious once you start to work with it.
Right.
And it doesn't require anybody's religion. It doesn't require anything like that. Is that your intuitive mind and love, devotion, are absolute necessary qualities and aspects of a healthy human psyche. That there's got to be love or devotion, not necessarily devotion in the religious sense, but devotion could be a father like yourself is devoted to you have a daughter, yes?
Yep.
Your daughter. Okay, that's devotion. And that devotion helps a human mind. And when that human mind, when it has the watery quality of devotion, even in the form of a father's love for the daughter, will help hold the mind in content.
Yes.
Therefore, it's an antidote to depression, antidote to anxiety, antidote to anger and passive aggressive behaviors. But that type of devotion in and of itself may not be enough. It may not be enough. Devotion to the family, devotion to your job, devotion, because now the devotion still, in a certain way, in most cases, a devotion to a job, for instance, it's pointing in the direction of impermanence still, or it's pointing, we could say, in the downward direction, not downward meaning bad, but just downward being finite.
Right.
Upward being infinite. So if a person can also generate devotion towards the part of themselves that is love, the part of life that is love, it need not be the G-O-D. It need not be contextualized that way, but it could be. Because again, it goes back to, as long as you're a human being, you're always going to have an image of yourself. That comes from how the yogis would describe it, the fire element. And the fire element is, from the physical context, is what governs your vision. It also governs the heart muscle, the liver, the skin, the blood, etc. So it governs the sense of vision. But on the subtle mind, the subtle body, it governs the sense of imagery, so your sense of identity. So as long as you're a human being, you're always going to have some image of yourself. Therefore, you're always going to have some image of something supreme of you, something that must have created you, whether consciously or subconsciously. Now, atheists may disagree with me, but I would push back on that. Because if you keep pushing back and going back and going back, and again, this does not require you any belief in a creator or a God, but it just requires that you do have a sense that there is love, and that's really the only important thing. And what if there was the sense, this possibility, that at the nucleus of creation was love? And again, I live in the mystery. I'm not saying that is what is in the nucleus of creation, although I have a very good sense that it may be. But in the nucleus of creation, the nucleus of whatever this life is, and the nucleus of each individual is love. Not sexy love, but real love. What if that were the case? Okay, now, if the devotional energy becomes, or the cultivation of our lives becomes in service to that, I'm making myself an instrument of that, of being good-natured, of helping, of being serviceful, of making sure that love is the predominant thing that is flowing through me. And I have enough discipline to do the right practice, to keep the energy healthy, to keep the mind clear, to keep my body vital, so that love can serve through me. That's a type of devotion that is pointing in an upward direction, in the sense that it's not pointing towards the finite. It's pointing towards the one thing that never changes. And so that type of devotion will, at even a more substantive and powerful level, hold the mind in a content, in a happiness. And that becomes a very sustainable antidote to our adversities, to our depressions, anxieties. I'm not trying to make it sound easy or quick, but that's why I say consistency. It's the long, slow grind.
Yeah.
And making little progress one day at a time, instead of trying to make big progress really quickly, which is unrealistic. You can make big progress really quickly, but to stabilize whatever the progress is that you've made takes a lot longer, and anyone who's worked on it knows that, and I'm sure, I would imagine the experience through working in recovery, etc. You found out, what are the tools that I need? Well, sometimes sometimes it's not a Yogi Bhajan moment, and I'm going to turn on, what do you do? What do you turn on? What was the music you were referencing?
What? Oh, the music that I was listening to? I mean, I listened to like bands like Minor Threat, and I like this band called Good Riddance. And they're bands that I listened to when I was a teenager, that I was hearing them talk about what it would be like,
That's like punk rock?
Yeah, punk rock. But it's, they're not drinking and taking drugs. And I got introduced even to veganism through that. And even at the time, go back 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, and I'm hearing this stuff and I'm thinking something inside of me is going, wouldn't it be so cool if you like had the guts to do that? And then on the surface, I'm going, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's stupid or whatever. But there's a lesson in there that took me a long time to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I read that book. What's that book? Dharma Punks?
Yeah.
I can't remember the brother's name.
Noah Levine. It's funny that you bring that up because
Yeah.
I was going to say when you said, I wonder what the atheists would have to say about this. I was going to say, I have one of my favorite atheists. I'm interviewing him on Thursday, and it's Noah Levine.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. I read that book at one point. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
Dharma Punks.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
what put me on, and I just celebrated. You know, I've been in recovery for. I went to treat. I've had a substance abuse problem for 20 years of my life, 23 years of my life, and it wasn't until meeting Guru Singh a couple of years ago that I finally put the bottle down. Like I always thought, oh, as long as you don't take drugs, it's no problem. And it took me over 20 years to get it, but everything lined up, and I've been doing practice along the way. And I think one of the things is that, speaking of Kundalini yoga, is that I did all the posturing. I could put my leg behind my head, put my feet on top of my head, do all the things. I read all the books. I went to university. I did all the intellectual posturing. And then when I started doing this practice, Kundalini yoga, I had to face my mind. And it's been incredible. Like I didn't go to a meeting or anything over the past 2 years of getting sober. I just did sadhana and kept a close relationship to a teacher. And I've just been amazed at, what worked. Now, that being said, all those years of posturing intellectually and physically, those were a part of the process. This has been a 23-year, talk about a slow grind. This has been a 23-year grind. And now I'm in a position where I can actually be of service to people. And I got a box full of tools.
Yeah. It's the beautiful grind, because at first it seems like hard work, and it is hard work for sure, but it's that type of work that you end up in, it's like a love affair. Marriage is hard work, isn't it? I think it's hard work.
Yeah.
To keep a marriage healthy. Yeah, but it's great. It's beautiful work.
Yeah.
It's a love affair. Love affair.
Yeah. Yeah. It requires a steadiness. That's for sure. And the clarity that comes along, though, I really love the way that you were talking about this coming into everything, because, for me, the reason why it isn't hard for me to be consistent in my daily practices is because I've experienced what it's like to not in a pretty severe way. Like, I almost lost it all. And I did that once before when I was younger. And so now when I do my sadhana, it's really like, at first, I think the first year of putting the bottle down and using Kundalini yoga to get clean, the first year was like, I have to do my sadhana or something bad is going to happen. And then the survival, exactly. And then the second year of it was like, wow, like I get to do all the things that are important to me with mental clarity and full presence. And that's the best. And why wouldn't I do that? It's like, I don't have a day when I feel sick and don't want to hang out with my daughter because I had a late night the night before and I had too much to drink, or I'm not, telling stories to my partner because, I'm partying or whatever. I get to be fully engaged in that relationship with my daughter, fully engaged in that relationship with my partner. I get to go to punk rock shows. I get to go to reggae shows. I get to collect records. I get to play basketball. I get to teach and be in the center with the students. It's like every moment is this moment of like, wow, this is me and this is amazing. And if I don't keep consistency in my practice, there's like a dullness that sets in.
Yeah, beautifully said. And you found a new way to get high, essentially, and one that leaves you with a net gain on the back end instead of a net loss. And And I think that's necessary. You have to, what is the way that we get lifted in a way that doesn't make us dull or, less vitality, but more vitality, more clarity. And so that's the early part of it, is like, first you have the survival, I just need to do it just to hang on. For some people, that's often the case. And then then it can hit a point where, all right, consistency isn't very difficult anymore. I'm consistent, I've developed that habit. It's part of a lifestyle now. And so for the most part, it's not difficult at all, the consistency part. But what does, I feel and experience to be something that does end up happening, is it takes maintenance to make sure that then whatever it is that I am being consistent with remains fresh and juicy, And so, like, I bet you get that from being in the center with the students, with doing podcasts, et cetera, reading, studying, being most important of all is being a student, being a student of the teachings, and being a student of the lifestyle, being a studentship is, I think, so crucial. And so that becomes, like, all right, how do we stay juicy and fresh to where it doesn't start to become going through the motions, or then doesn't the new sense of identity, all right, now I'm no longer a this or a that I used to be, but I'm now a this. But now, so that identity doesn't get so stagnant and rigid. Okay, I'm into yoga, I'm into this, and I'm that. But then I start posturing. Pun slightly intended.
Yeah.
I start posturing subconsciously. You know what I'm saying? To where then it develops this new facade, but it's more like a spiritualized facade. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To where then the thing becomes, we're saying all the right words, we're going through all the right motions, but we've been somehow got disconnected from what was genuine to us and who we are. That's why I like the punk rock thing in, your case, is because it, keeps you real, keeps you gritty. And then knowing that, all right, that might not move the pranic life force intelligence up through the heart chakra and through the throat so that it nurtures and feeds the pineal gland. Might not do that.
Yeah.
But you got other things that'll do that. But that punk rock, so to speak, now we're using it just as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Or analogy, keeps you real.
Yeah.
Keeps you gritty. And if you're feeling angry or feeling whatever, I'm not projecting this onto you. I'm speaking, generally.
Yeah.
Then you got something like, I can turn that up, turn up the subwoofer, move some energy that way. But I know I'm going to do sadhana, And so then I got my sadhana practice.
Yeah.
And I got that meditation practice. Not so I'm going to be a rigid meditator, a rigid spiritual guy, but so that I can be relaxed and enjoy life and go out and shoot hoops and do whatever and have fun with my kid and do all the things that we're here to do, enjoy life. Because I have enough discipline and enough smarts and enough wisdom to actually do what I need to do so that I can do what I want to do. You ever seen The Great Debaters with Forrest Whitaker and Denzel?
No, I haven't.
And that's a good movie. It's been years since I've seen it, but Forrest Whitaker plays this pastor, and they're living in Jim Crow South. So I'd imagine like the type of parenting you have to do in the Jim Crow South is very different than what you and I have to do with our kids.
Right.
We're both Caucasians living in relatively affluent. I don't even know where you live. I know that, you're doing all right, but living in the Jim Crow South as a black person, there's a different type of parenting you have to do. No doubt about it.
Right.
To protect your children. Anyways, Forrest Whitaker's son is one of the main characters in the movie. And that was the thing he always told him in the movie. And I always took that away from that movie. I don't know if it was original in that movie, but it stuck with me. I actually use it with my son. Do what you need to do so that you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
What you need to do is make sure your mind is like a diamond. So then what you want to do is enjoy life and be filled with love. What you need to do is purify that mind, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then what you want to do is you want to be in blissfulness. You want to be happy. What you need to do, boys, your homework is what you want to do is be freed up. Do what you need to do, because otherwise what you want, if you go with what you want to do first, you're not going to really get it. It's going to be a false freedom, a freedom that comes with a weight.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. What you need to do.
Yeah.
Then you'll do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's an interesting one, even with the identity point that we sort of touched on during this conversation, is that, you know, we are doing what we need to do with the aspect of the meditation, keeping the mind clean, and also doing what you want to do, enjoying your life. And then as you pass through that, you still come up against confusion. I think one of my favorite stories that comes to mind with Yogi Bhajan that really sits with me, as somebody said, okay, I'm really getting the benefits of this practice, but I need to know like what to do when you get confused. Like, what do you do with confusion? And he told the person, if you find out, let me know. You know, and we look at somebody who's a great teacher like that, and to think like, yeah, everybody's going through that. Like, the confusion comes up, and that's why the consistency in the practice is so important, because it doesn't just go away. Like, there's always the moment of like, what am I doing? What could I be doing more? What about this? What about, and I guess that's just the mind turning and turning and turning, or the thinking mind.
I know what to do. I know what to do when you feel confusion. You feel confused.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's what I go by. You know, what do you do if you're feeling anxious? Feel anxious. What do you do if you feel confused? Feel confused. Because otherwise you're stuffing that into somewhere else, you know, or you frustrate yourself. So if it's like this is not in opposition to Yogi Bhajan's advice. You know, I'm just having fun with it more or less.
Yeah, I see.
But it's also very real.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what he was saying. Well, let me know, you know, because there's nothing to really figure out.
Right.
If you're confused, then if you don't want to be confused and then you indulge your dislike of confusion and then you magnify your dislike of confusion because I shouldn't be confused, then it exacerbates the whole thing.
Right.
Whereas if it's okay to be confused and I'm smart enough, I'm not going to make any important decisions. If I'm confused, I'm going to wait for clarity to come.
Yes.
I know it's not a head trip, you know, it's a heart trip. So, all right, this confusion, help me, Lord, but I don't know what to do. And I'm cool with, and I'm cool with that. I might not like it, but I'm cool. But here's the last part of that they didn't cover in the Great Debaters. That Forrest Whitaker, who I believe Forrest Whitaker is a Kundalini yoga guy, or at least at one point he was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think he was a student of Krishna in LA. I believe I saw that at some point. I don't know 100% though. So anyhow, the last part of that is you do what you need to do so that you do what you want to do. But then over time, if what you need to do is a yogic thing, meaning that it's what tunes you in, it's what gives you your experience of your own infinity, impermanence, then what you need to do and what you want to do will slowly begin to merge into the same thing.
Yes, that's it. That's it. That's the you know, Khalil, I think it's Khalil Gibran, the teaching of, you know, what appears to bind you is what makes you free. But it doesn't, you know, and that's true. I mean, I could even say that about my own experience with the resistance teacher of substance abuse. Like, if I didn't pass through all of this pain and error, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about this. You know, it doesn't work like that. And then it brings up the question, and I don't know that we may have to save this for another time, but then it brings up the question is like, how much say do you actually have in all of this? Like if everything is mind and you have a relationship to all of this, and I look at my life and I can see like, yes, I had say in me getting to where I am, and then in other ways it's like, but did I? And that question will always be there.
Mm-hmm. That's the mystery,
Yeah.
and that's why, it's hard to make it a head trip.
Yeah.
The head trip's a difficult path.
Yeah.
That's why I'm into the love trip, because I'm into that, and I'm into exploring that, but I'm into exploring it. I'm into exploring the mystery and not be too concerned with what the answers are.
Yes.
As much as, wow, that's cool. That's trippy. Far out.
Yeah.
But not needing to know.
Yeah.
I don't need to know.
Yeah.
The only thing I need to know is that how can I live as a happy person? And happy people come, I think, from being service and love oriented.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
you want to get happiness, I think you have to share it with others.
Yeah.
And that could just be a smile, or anything. Little itty bitty things can sometimes have big impacts.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, man, I sure appreciate I just looked at the time for the recording and I was like, holy smokes, we began this conversation with talking about going beyond time and space, and it feels like it's been 10 minutes, but it's been more than
we did it.
It's been more. Maybe we'll have to make some plans down the line for a round 2, because I sure enjoyed chatting with you about all of this.
Anytime, man.
Yeah. Hey, Jaidev, could you let people know where they can get in touch with you for, like the Life Force Academy? Where's the best place to reach you on social media? What you're up to? Anything you want listeners to know about?
Yeah, for sure. So my website's jaidevsingh.com, but to get the Life Force Academy, check this out. It's very simple. The URL is LFA, like Life Force Academy, LFA.yoga. So they can go to LFA.yoga, check out the Life Force Academy, and my website you can find through there. jaidevsingh.com is not as easy to spell as LFA.yoga, but I'm on Facebook. Jaidev Singh, Jaidev, 2 words, and then my last name is Singh, Singh. And Instagram, I'm there, and Twitter, I'm there, and hit me up. I love to connect with people, and we're all over the place, traveling all over. So all my events are up on our Facebook page, event page, and love to connect with everyone out there.
Beautiful, man. And we, of course, I would love to, if your wife is ever interested in coming on here and having a chat, I would sure love to talk to her. We play her music constantly at the Dharma Temple. She's something special. You already know that, though.
She is something special. And I know she's my wife, but I'm still always in awe of, she has this new live album that I'm just like, God, man, it's so good. And I'm sure you experience this in your own ways. Like there's a woman who's like my wife that, we have household, relationships and, domestic life, etc.
Uh-huh.
And then there's this woman that gets up on stage and that sings, and there's something else going on there. And I'm still in awe of it. I'm always am. Like I don't barely turn her music off unless I'm putting on some punk rock.
It's funny.
I'm more of a hip hop guy, but
yeah. Well, hey, I like it all. I mean, I've been collecting records most of my life. I was talking to this numerologist on the last episode, and he was like, "Oh yeah, your numbers is all sound." He's like, "It just makes sense. You're just like, you can't not have sound, so just continue to explore it the way you are. That's your spiritual practice." whether it's doing my japji every morning or whether it's listening to hip hop or punk rock or reggae or, I just, I've always been like that. I'm in the record store, I'm
Yeah.
listening to music, and now my daughter's got her own section on the shelf where she can buy her own vinyl. And so she's not just like flipping through YouTube and listening to things for 10 seconds. And
all right, that's good parenting. That's what's so dope about Simrit, though. A friend of ours, Belinda Carlisle from the Go-Go's, is also a Kundalini yogi, and her and Simrit are very tight. They're good friends, and when she wrote this thing about Simrit, she's like, I don't know what it is, and this is what she said. She's like, Simrit she's just like punk rock to me. Like, there's something about her. And because it's not like this, and now I'm talking, not Belinda, but there's just like, it's not this kind of, it's nothing like I've ever experienced, where it's got the whole mantric element going on, but it's not the kind of typical, landscape mantric sound.
Mm-hmm.
It has this whole thing that travels into in another way, has this penetrative power, and then on the other side, like great musicianship,
yes,
and artistry and all that. And yet it is lifting up the life force into the high center. So for me, like, all right, here we go. We're starting to get, and I'm the same as you, man. I love all types of music, but what I love about what she's doing and what her whole band and her are doing is it's that level. Like, it's like going to see Burning Spear or going to see The Dead, that type of level of musicianship, artistry. And it has the thing where it does the same thing as a Kundalini Yoga Kriya, where it lifts the life force up into the high centers. And that's what I've been yearning for in our music. And it's not and it doesn't do it in a way that waters it down.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes that fusion stuff will water the mantric stuff down, and this thing, it maintains the like deep depth and authenticity of it. Anyways, man, I know she's my wife, but I honestly feel like I'd be talking about her like that if she wasn't my wife, that music, just because I love the music so much.
I hear you fully. Definitely, especially with the kora, I love that. It's got the like midnight kind of sound. Have you heard that midnight album that he did with Yusufa Sidibe?
Yeah, we got that album. I love that. Yeah. And Salif on the kora, he is a maestro. He's just, there's very few people on this side, outside of Mali that can play the kora like that, man.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
Oh boy, yeah,
amazing.
Well, we could go on and on.
I know.
Man. I bet you're trying to.
I know we could. So I think we'll call it here, and we'll do a round 2. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, Jaidev. It's just such an inspiration to have you on here, and we really loved having this chat, and I'm sure the listeners will love listening to it.
Right on. Thanks.
All right. I'll talk to you in a sec.